Yes, we are live. All right. Hey, folks. This is Vihar. I am one of the developer relations engineer here at AppSmith, and today I'm super excited for our live stream, which is how we built Auto-height for widgets with our senior most engineers, Abhinav. Today we have Joseph and Abhinav joining us for the call. Uh, Joseph and Abhinav, why don't you quickly introduce for the community?
Hey, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer advocate with AppSmith. I was a community member for a long time and started with AppSmith last year.
Awesome.
Hi. Hey, I'm Abhinav. I have been with AppSmith since the beginning. I'm an engineer here. I have been working with the UI building aspects of AppSmith since the beginning.
Awesome. So Abhinav, where are you joining from?
I'm from Bangalore.
Awesome. Joseph?
Florida.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So let me quickly walk you through the agenda for today's call. As we all are aware, today we'll be discussing about our new feature, which is Auto-height for widgets. And as you all know, Abhinav and the entire team has been working on this widget, and we shipped it a couple of months back. It's been one of the most loved features on AppSmith. And today we'll be doing a complete teardown of how it works, and we'll actually go behind the scenes of how the team had built this feature. We will get started with a quick intro of what exactly is Auto-height for widgets feature, and then we'll move on to the brains behind the Auto-height for widgets. All right, Joseph, can you quickly share your screen?
Sure. Yep.
So folks, in case if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Also, do share where you're joining from, on the chat.
All right. Can you see this?
Yes, I can see
Yes,
this.
you can.
Cool.
All right, folks.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead.
We'll quickly go through what exactly is Auto-height for widgets feature. We have made a quick presentation for you all to get hands on this. We will also share this app post the live stream. You can fork it and you can test it on your own AppSmith instances. All right. So the first, exhibit is the text widgets fold around the content inside. So to demo this, we have a quick example. So on the left, you have the text widget without auto height enabled, and on the right, you have a text widget where auto height is enabled. So as you can see, we have added a little bit of vertical height for the widget on left. So right now we are only just showing one paragraph and it looks perfectly all right. But when you have two paragraphs now, uh, the widget on the left, you see the height just adjusted based on the height that you have given while dragging and dropping the widget. But on the right, the text was added right under the paragraph, which is essentially adjusting to the height of the text widget. What Here comes the interesting part. When you have three paragraphs, you'll need to actually scroll through this widget, but here the scroll isn't enabled. So that's the reason all your text is cramped inside the text widget. But with auto height enabled, you will actually see all the content smoothly taking the height of the entire text widget. So this is the first exhibit. So basically the text widget folds around the content inside based on the height. So the widget automatically adjusts the height depending on the content inside the text widget. All right. Next, move on to the second exhibit. This is a very interesting one. This will actually make your apps look more beautiful when there is no content inside a few widgets. So here is a simple, use case for this. We have a table widget, and when clicking on rows between table widget, you actually see the content is changing inside, the other two widgets. For example, when Joseph had clicked build your first app, there were no assignments. When you have how AppSmith works, there are a bunch of assignments, and with auto height, all right.
There
Yes.
we go.
So with auto height enabled, you will actually see the entire container going away, and the widgets automatically adjust depending on the height. So, but on the left, when the auto height isn't enabled, you will see the table widget just goes blank. So this is how you can actually trigger visible events, and the auto height feature automatically adjust based on the content inside the widgets. All right, let's move on to the third exhibit. All right. Auto height enabled widgets also change their size to changing screen size. So this is super handy when it comes to mobile or tab devices. Say for example, if you have text widgets, and the text is dynamic inside the text widget, you will need to either scroll based on the height if the auto height isn't enabled. But when auto height is enabled, the text automate if even if it's a dynamic text, it automatically takes up the space when the auto height is enabled. So you need not scroll when you are using mobile screens, or when you are using on tabs. All right. The last exhibit is basically with the containers, and this has been also one of the most requested features. Uh, Dragging and dropping multiple widgets on container, is a bit tricky. You'll need to first adjust the height of the container and then move your widgets. But with auto height enabled, all you need to do is just drag and drop widgets inside the container, and the container automatically adjusts the height based on the space taken by every individual widget inside that container. For example, here you have a table widget, and we are showing like 10 rows. Here, as you can see on the left, you'll have the scroll effect inside the table because the auto height isn't enabled. But on the right, you'll not have any scroll effect because the height auto height is enabled on the container. So it takes up the entire space of the container, and you need not again go back and update the heights of the container widget. All right, so this is how it works. Joseph, do you want to quickly add any few other use cases that you love when you're using auto height widget?
Yeah, especially with containers, it really speeds things up when you're building, because before you would have to either preemptively resize the container, make extra room so there was somewhere to drag that new widget, or you'd have to like put the widget somewhere else on the canvas first and resize it really small so that it would fit in there. But you can just skip that now and go straight to dragging a new widget into a container that looks like there's no room, and it'll just resize and make room for it.
Awesome. Cool. All right, folks. That's all for the quick intro of Auto-height for Widgets feature. Now we'll go behind the scenes of the Auto-height feature. So we have Abhinav, who had been working on this feature with the entire team. Abhinav, why don't you quickly walk us through what Auto-height widgets feature is in your head?
Well, auto height is basically something that is expected out of any web application. So when you have block elements in HTML, you don't find those elements cutting off the content preemptively, and they expand according to the contents. So we tried to map that experience that is expected into AppSmith.
All right. So what exactly is your initial inspiration for Auto-height widget feature?
A lot of inspiration. So initially, this was added as a issue, either internally, I believe, which in AppSmith, and there was a lot of activity from the community on that GitHub issue. We had a lot of requests from the team itself. So we dogfood the AppSmith application internally. So we have a lot of our team members working on AppSmith applications. They found this a little uncomfortable, and we also wanted to improve the space at which you can build applications. Yeah, and eventually it was all about creating expected behavior in AppSmith.
All right. So you also mentioned this concept of HTML blocks. Can you explain it in a bit detail around how this concept of HTML blocks is had contributed to this feature?
Sure. I can probably show you what it means. Let me just share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to. Oh, apparently I can't share my screen. Uh, how about uh, Vihar? Would you mind sharing your screen, or Joseph, if you could open appsmith.com or some other website like that where I can demonstrate this?
Sure. Yeah. Vihar, do you want me to get it or do you got it?
Yeah, I think you go ahead. My system is like going crazy now. All right. Yes.
Right. So,
You want to
Joseph,
inspect it?
let's go to a simple website instead of an AppSmith application like
Let's.
AppSmith.com. Let's just
Yeah.
use that.
Okay.
All right. So let's pick any div here. If you could open the developer tools on this browser and select maybe the checklist that we have. Right. This one. So if you go to the parent div here, and you know copy the UL element here and just paste it again into this yeah, structure, the UL class one. Yeah, this one. If you could copy this and just paste it right here.
All right.
As you can see, the div actually increased its height to accommodate all of its contents. So if you hover over the div, which is above the UL in the developer tools, you will notice that it has the full height. And this is the expected behavior for block elements, and that's what we try to emulate here with the widgets in AppSmith.
Got it. Awesome. All right. So when building this feature, Abhinav, did you have to go through any architectural changes?
Yes, there were quite a few actually. A couple of them that I recall is one of them was regarding uh, uh, calling actions right after any property update, which was not possible before in AppSmith. We also had to figure out which are the points at which we actually have a layout update being persisted into the Redux store, and figure out those points and call certain functions in those areas.
Got it. All right. So, Joseph, I have a quick question for you. Since you are working on templates, after auto-height feature, like, did you see any changes there?
It's given us more options, definitely, especially with like tab widgets where you want to be able to layer different things, right? If use that same area of the canvas for different purposes, and you could do that with a tab widget. But then if the content height is different for each tab, you'd end up having like a bunch of wasted empty space on one tab, but then the next tab needs all that space, you know. So it really helps with styling and arranging things on the canvas. We're just getting started with implementing that into new templates, but it opens up a lot of possibilities because of that.
Got it. So, Abhinav, did you also consider about the old widgets or widgets, that might be deprecated because of this feature?
Yes, so that's one of the important considerations that we have for any feature. A lot of applications are already built on AppSmith. A lot of people are using AppSmith for their business critical needs. So we need to make sure that we don't disrupt that workflow by making such large abrupt changes. So by default, if you open AppSmith in a newer version, so the version in which we released AppSmith, you won't find any differences. That's because the fixed mode still exists, and that's the default for those applications. And from there, you could decide to use Auto-height, and then try and arrange your layout accordingly. Or you could drag and drop new widgets, which will some of them will have Auto-height enabled by default.
Got it. Understood. All right. So this actually leads to my next question. So how did you approach the design and the entire development process of this feature?
Well, we started with the inspiration, obviously. So we knew that we had to do this, and this would eventually, improve the pace at which we build UI in AppSmith, and that's something that we are working towards. So then we had to, figure out what are we going to, do over here, and that was also fairly obvious, where we had the example of the HTML block elements, like I've mentioned. So we began with the decision process, where we wanted to figure out how are we going to provide this feature so that we have minimal disruption for existing users, and newer widgets can take advantage of this particular feature. So we decided on the three different properties that you see today. One is auto height, another is auto height with limits, and the fixed.
Understood. So how many members were involved during the entire process? Because I see that, designers need to come in, engineers need to come in, project managers need to come in. So what was the entire plan like
Well,
when doing the design?
right. So there were a lot of members who were eventually involved in some way or the other. Like, for example, you both are here, talking about this feature. So I would
Mhm.
consider you both as well as somebody who contributed to this feature. So there were a lot of team members who were involved. But when it comes to pure engineering aspects, initially there were just two members. It was Ankur and I, and Momchilo was helping out with the designs. Eventually, for later stages of the projects, we had the help of a couple of other team members who were helping with certain bug fixes and certain particular scenarios in the Auto-height feature.
Understood. So did you see this project as like a one go feature, or did you plan to work in phases, when shipping this feature? Because there were a lot of widgets involved in this, on AppSmith app. And how did your plan go in terms of shipping this?
Right. So there is a lot to do, when it comes to emulating the auto height feature as you have on the on standard HTML.
Mhm.
So we decided to first go about the standard way, where we have the basic engine, we have most of the widgets that require auto height actually work correctly. We also had planned the invisible widgets part for a later phase of the project. We brought in a part of that because we felt that it would be super useful. I see some of the comments already mentioning that. So yeah, so invisibility was initially not a part of this particular feature, but we still decided to add it into this first phase of the feature. There is more coming up. We are planning certain improvements to this feature, certain performance improvements, certain structural improvements to this feature.
Understood. Got it. So what were some of the challenges you faced during the development process, and how did you plan to come over them?
Right. So from the get-go, it was obvious to us. So the way apps were designed initially is that since users were able to manually resize all of their widgets, the components within those widgets were adapting to the provided height. Now the paradigm had shifted completely. It was the opposite paradigm, where the components used to tell us what the content length is, and then the widget would adapt to that. So that was the first challenge that we needed to resolve. Then we had performance to be considered, where we wanted to make sure that this is done in batches so that we don't keep refreshing our users pages. We needed to make sure that it's done in one flow as much as possible. um, we had to make decisions regarding certain widgets on making sure that in fixed mode they work exactly the same as they did earlier, so that it doesn't disrupt our users experience so far. And for auto height, we made the necessary changes to make things work.
Understood. So I'm assuming that there would be also some crazy logic behind the front end, especially on the Redux store. Can you also add like a comment on that?
Yeah, so over here, the way AppSmith works is that we have a single source of truth with respect to data. We have
Mhm.
a Redux state that defines everything that happens on the canvas. So where it's positioned, what the properties are, everything. And here we were trying to implement a few features that is something that is coming out in V2 that would require us to break away a little in a transient manner, and then eventually get to a state where everything is defined by the data. So yeah, so that was another thing that we had to consider during the development of this particular feature.
Got it. Also, when it comes to challenges, Joseph had mentioned in the call saying that he had to manually fix the height of the tabs widget, before the auto height feature, and now it all flexes away based on the widgets you are adding inside the tab widget. I think this must be like a special case when compared to regular containers. So
Yeah.
so how did you handle these?
Yeah, absolutely. So this actually ties on to your previous question regarding the architectural changes. So we had to introduce certain code paths that did not exist before to make this work. So this was so, so knowing when you change your tab is something that happens during runtime. It happens live. So we had to plug into the current state of the application to make those computations and make sure that whatever tab you selected the tabs widget adapts to those children.
Understood. Got it. When speaking of the tab widget, suddenly the most favorite widgets table and list widget just popped
Mhm.
up. Uh, so there, how are we handling this
Yeah,
auto height?
so yes, that's a very good point here. So list widget and table widget, especially table widget, is one of our most used widgets, and we wanted to make sure that this, if auto height applies, it should apply well and makes the experience better. So if you have ever interacted with the table widget, you'll notice that if you haven't defined proper pagination in the property pane, when the server-side pagination is enabled, you will see all the items listed with a scroll. And scrolls are the one thing that auto-height tends to avoid. So initially, during the early parts of the uh, you know development phase, we actually had auto-height enabled for this particular scenario. Later, so some a part of our team was working on certain improvements on the table. So the table team was working on making sure that the scrolling experience, um, the performance of the server-side pagination of the table is much better. And when it comes to making decisions between having a feature and having better performance, we always go for performance. So that's where the decision was to not go with auto height until we have a performant way of introducing auto height into the table widget, and make sure that the performance is as is.
Got it. So, Joseph, do you want to add a comment on this, because you are building like a lot of apps using using the table and the list widget especially. Uh, so
Yeah.
I think even you prefer for these widgets, if the auto height were disabled, it would you know be better. So what were your comments on this?
Yeah. So with the auto height on a table, there's a feature that's fairly new. You can make the text in a column wrap. So just
Mm-hmm.
one row, one column of the table starts to wrap that text, and then that row gets taller.
Right.
Will the entire table widget now auto size based on the data changing in individual rows? Does that make sense? I don't. Does it look at the content at the row level um, to know if the entire table needs to expand?
Right.
Right. So yeah, that's what we will be trying to improve with respect to the table widget. So here, what we're talking about, the real product necessity for the table widget to have auto height. When we were working on this particular feature, we were working on the platform level changes where it is feasible for widgets to have auto height. And in this particular scenario, the only place where you actually have a scroll in auto height in the table widget is when you have server side pagination enabled, and that's the only scenario where we thought auto height would be beneficial.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, but your points are valid. So this is something that we have to consider when we actually bring auto height into the table widget. So these are the scenarios that we are going to solve for, and look at all other scenarios that actually apply.
Okay.
Got
Are
it.
there any widgets that it just doesn't apply to that won't ever have auto height?
Yes, absolutely. So there are certain widgets to which applying auto height would be kind of an anti-pattern. So, for example, the divider widget or the button widget. So, for these widgets, we decided not to uh, go ahead and have auto hide because it just doesn't make sense. So, like I said, we tried to restrict ourselves to block elements. There are certain widgets that have auto hide, but they are disabled by default. For example, the input widget, and the only reason why you would have auto hide for, let's say, the date picker is if you have a really long label.
Hmm.
Understood.
Makes sense.
I think we can also consider around the input widget. So people usually type in a lot of text, and with auto height enabled, the text can go down. So can you also talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah. So when it comes to text area, that actually involves changing content that can increase the height of the widget, and that's an improvement that we are actually working on right now. We are changing how the text area aspect of the input widget works, and apply auto height to that.
Got it. Understood. All right, Abhinav. Next, can you walk us through high-level overview of technical details, behind this feature?
Right. So It's fairly simple. We have a platform engine that basically does all the computations as long as the widgets tell us, sorry, the components within the widgets tell us how large the content is. So the way we have designed it is basically we batch all the requests in one render cycle where all the widgets that need a change to their heights are sending a trigger to the base platform. And then we have the engine, which basically computes all the changes for all the widgets based on the changes that we have so far and applies that back to the state, and that state propagates back to the widget. So this is the cycle in which it goes. So we wanted to make it easier for upcoming widgets to plug into Auto-height as well. So we made sure that it's a simple configuration. We have new architectural updates where we have something called platform level features that can be enabled into widgets now. So dynamic height being one of them.
Understood. So speaking about the technical details, so the entire auto height feature is basically building on top of the canvas. Your widgets basically adjust to the content that is inside them. But when speaking about the canvas, you also have the reflow and resize algorithm,
Mhm.
which basically lets other widgets move and adjust your new widgets coming onto the canvas.
Right.
I feel these are somewhere interlinked. But did you have to deal with also keeping in mind of the other features? Did you also have to make any changes to what you're thinking about the auto height for
Not
widgets?
yeah, not in the V1 though. So in the V1, reflow was basically something that was completely independent of auto-height, because the way auto-height works is basically it looks at the contents
Mhm.
of a particular widget and then responds with new heights for those widgets. With when you're resizing and reflowing, it's being done in a different cycle where you're dragging and dropping. So until you drop it, the platform won't trigger an auto height update because you're still in the middle of making changes. Things are going to change a little bit in V2, where we have instant updates coming in, where while you're resizing or dragging and dropping within container-like widgets, you will see the containers uh, expand or contract based on where you are within the containers. Yeah, but there's one place where resize, reflow, and auto hide did connect, which is the state. As I said earlier, there is a single source of truth, which is our state in AppSmith, that basically describes what is the state of the layout. So auto height and resize and reflow, they both either subscribe to the same state or they persist into the same state, so that there's no discrepancy.
Understood. Got it. So when you started this feature, were there any framework considerations that you have in your mind, or did your team want to do it completely from scratch?
Yeah, so when we first started for the computations for what happens to the other widgets that are pushed around by the changes in one or more widgets, for those I wanted to use a library called Box Intersect. It's an NPM library which was pretty useful in the initial phases, but then later we realized that it's simply a mathematical formula. So all we had to do was write a function that this did this computation for us, and we did not need to increase the footprint of our build sizes just to introduce a new library. So we did not go ahead and use that library. Although I found it beneficial, it was simply not necessary for this particular scenario.
Understood. Got it. So how did you envision users using auto-height widget feature? Like when
Right.
you're starting on it?
Got it. So, to me personally, as somebody who has been involved in this project since the beginning, I would expect users to find it seamless, where if auto height is enabled, they just go ahead and continue doing what they used to do. It should just be something that is available in the platform and nothing, something that they won't have to think about. For certain widgets where we have disabled it by default, it's on a need basis. If you really need to have auto hide in those scenarios, that's when you would interact with the property which is in the property pane. There is one extra feature with that we have provided, which is the auto hide with limits, and I
Mhm.
think that is a matter of control. So how much control do you want with respect to how much a widget can grow or shrink? So that's one nice aspect that I think is about AppSmith, about AutoHeight and AppSmith. Yeah.
Got it. So you basically want to blend this entire feature in the existing workflow without doing any making any changes.
Yeah, that's the ideal. Yeah.
All right. So did you also have consideration of mobile responsiveness when working on this feature? Because today, as we have seen on the exhibits before,
Mhm.
the text widgets were super handy when the auto heights were enabled on the text widget. But for the other ones, did you have any consideration for the mobile screens?
Well, we are working on a project called mobile responsiveness, actually. So that is, focusing on these aspects that you mentioned. Auto height is, if you the way we have the canvas widths today, the way it is meant to be used is to start building in the viewport of your choice, so that it can cater to those particular viewports. When your users use it. So I would say that it's an icing on the cake. But yeah, stay tuned for the mobile responsiveness feature that is going to make building responsive features, responsive layouts a lot easier.
All right. I'm going to take a pause here. We have a question in the chat from our very own conference. Uh, he's asking, wouldn't it be more natural if the text area scrolls to the left as the user types?
Do you mean increase the width?
Uh, yes.
Okay.
So I think he's mentioning about the
Yeah.
scroll. Like the text area scrolls to the left as the user types.
Um, well, when we change the width of widgets, we are talking about layout shifts, and we have limited space in the canvas on the horizontal axis. So, what we need to do here is, and auto height basically applies to, the vertical axis. So, if you look at, tools like Slack, or other tools that use these expanding input areas, what they do is basically the same thing. They basically make sure that the area increases as you write more text in it. I'm not sure about horizontally scrolling values. If it is a single line text and you enforce it to be a single line text, then I think it makes sense. I'm not sure about the usability of it, so it's we'll have to talk about it with our team to understand whether this is the right experience for any text area. Horizontal scrolling or vertical scrolling, both of them are scrolling in the end. And although horizontal will be fine on mobile, horizontal scrolling on desktop is something that I personally favor, try to avoid.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Understood. I hope that answers your question, Confidence. Cool. Abhinav, as we have already discussed, before, you said that the team is working in phases in order to complete this feature. So, what are the future plans around this to expand it?
Oh yeah, we are planning a couple of improvements. One of them is related to the drag and drop, like I mentioned earlier, where you will have instant updates to the container-like widgets, so that you don't have to wait for dropping the widget to see the container expand. It would expand while you're dragging and dropping or resizing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other update that we are planning is something that we think is quite impactful, which is any of the invisible widgets within an auto hide container would let go of their space when they're invisible in view mode or preview mode. So this will make it more natural, where if there is no widget, it shouldn't take up any space.
Got it. Got it. So with many more features coming in, we already have custom branding. We already have context retention. Soon we will be shipping custom JS libraries. So how do you see auto-height for widgets in the overall roadmap?
So it's all about making sure that we can build layouts as quickly as possible. It's about speed and pace. We don't want we want to do as much for our users as much we can, so that they can just focus on the business logic and the aspects of their particular use case. So the way AutoHeight ties into the roadmap is basically making UI building faster. So
Right.
that's the end goal. If our users find that AutoHeight makes the UI building experience faster, then we are successful.
Understood. Got it. All right, folks. These are the questions that we have for Abhinav today. Feel free to drop in any other questions on the chat if you have any. So Joseph, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I got one more for you. I know this is a fairly new feature, so maybe it's
Yeah.
too early to know, but have any new use cases for this come up that you didn't envision when you first thought of making this feature and the way you would use it? Since it's been out, has anybody came up with something you wouldn't have thought of, or like some unique use of it that you didn't envision?
Well, I wouldn't say that I have seen anything that we hadn't anticipated. I mean, that's probably one good thing that I can say about uh, our QA process, I guess, because
Okay.
we have touched upon
Yeah.
most of the scenarios that we have seen in the wild so far. So not really so far, but I hope to see something that you know uh, helps our users, and maybe that could be a trigger for us to enhance this feature
Yeah.
in future releases.
Sounds like a challenge for the community. Come up with a
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
case that he didn't think of.
Yeah, I would be happy to know about them. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
It's always I'm sorry. It is always a pleasure to see something that you have built being used in novel scenarios.
Understood. So, since we are speaking about community, Abhinav, what advice would you like to give, or what best practices would you like to give? Say, if a contributor is coming, onto AppSmith and wanted to contribute to this auto-height for widgets feature.
Yeah, Auto-height basically has been designed or structured in our code base in three major parts. Number one is obviously the core engine, which is in Auto-height sagas,
Mm-hmm.
which also ties to the Auto-height utils, that are the utility function that do some computations to create the next set of heights that the widget should have. And then we have the widget configuration. So we have made it easy for any new widget to have auto height by just having a configuration. It's about whether they have a changing content or not. And once you enable auto height for a widget, it'll just make sure that it wraps around a observer that listens to the content changes and sends these updates to the engine. So yeah, these are the three touch points: auto hide containers, which is the wrapper, the widgets themselves, which have the configuration, and the engine.
Understood. Got it. As you mentioned earlier, the phase two will be coming soon. So, what's the timeline like? How are you planning that right now?
Right. So we are working on a few updates to the auto hide. So we need to be careful about the upcoming updates because they pertain to how widgets work. So basically, auto hide is a feature that affects most of the widgets. So we want to make sure that our existing users are not affected, and the new users or existing users who drag and drop a new widget make the most of this particular feature. So this, along with mobile responsiveness that's coming up, that's going to make UI building you know a lot easier, faster. That's what we are looking for. So yeah, as soon as we have the GitHub issues open on GitHub, so I would request everybody who has any questions or suggestions to please comment on those. And when we have something ready for the community to see, we will be obviously sharing it on Discord.
Awesome. Thanks for that update, Abhinav. All right, folks. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it on chat. Uh, we'll wait for 5 minutes if there are any questions. So Abhinav, meanwhile, can you
Mhm.
share what other interesting features that you are working on apart from auto-height for widgets?
Yeah, I keep harping on about this, but mobile responsiveness is one that I'm personally involved in, and
Mhm.
that I think is going to make it a lot easier to make responsive and mobile friendly layouts for our users. So that's one feature that I'm really excited about, and of course the V2 of auto height, where we have a little more uh, natural feeling experience for auto height.
Understood. So, folks, in case if you want to stay tuned with all the updates in terms of these features, you can hop onto our Discord or just subscribe to the issues on GitHub. We'll also be sharing those links on our Discord channel after the stream. So, feel free to hop on in, feel free to share your use cases and help us make this feature better. All right, I think that's all for today. Thank you all for joining. I think we don't have any questions. Thank you, Abhinav, for your time. It was so fun talking with you and learning more
Yeah.
about this, auto height for widgets feature. Thank you, Joseph, for tuning in as well. We'll see you all on our next call.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
All right.